Win big in 2021 with RotoBaller.com's MMA Premium Pass. Are you ready to dominate? Are you really ready? RotoBaller's premium DFS package includes exclusive tools, DFS cheat sheets, research stations, lineup optimizer, so much more to help you win big. For a limited time, you can get that MMA Premium Pass for 50% off and use my promo code Knuckler. That is KNUCKLER, like the knuckleball pitcher, Knuckler, and get an additional 10% discount. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio, sign up today, and start rotoballing like a boss. Folks, what's up? This is Brady Grove with RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. As I said, due to some scheduling things, not going to be a prelim episode this week. Put my picks for the prelims for UFC 263 on Twitter. I'll be on the premium DFS chat on Saturday as well. But we have something much more exciting than a prelim episode today. We bring you another interlude episode. Friend of the show, making his second appearance on Tap That, the return of Ilyaz Mamadaliyev. What's up, Ilyaz?
Hey, sir. How are you doing? I am very glad to be back on the show. I loved it the first time we had this. I got to open up and do that interview, and it was a very fun experience.
Man, I told you, like, people loved that episode. I got probably more feedback and, people telling me how much they enjoyed it on that one than any of them so far. My dad said that he was, like, captivated by he was, like, sad when it ended because people really enjoyed it. And, the crazy thing is, man, we stopped recording and then you said something to me that I was like, damn, I wish that was in the episode. The thing about, when you were in middle school, the principal didn't know your name, even though you had, straight A's and whatnot.
Yes. I do remember talking about that. Um, Growing up, I was a very quiet kid, and especially in middle school, that's where you're going through that period in your life where you're figuring out in a way who you are and who you're becoming. And I remember just having excellent grades all the time, straight A's. I would be upset if I had a B. I remember one time I didn't show up to a concert that we were supposed to attend in school, and I got a C, and I didn't know how to react to that. So until high school, I wasn't really noticed until I got into MMA and everything, and I started communicating. I had a personality, but I was just very shy. And when I realized that was when I went back to middle school, and I had a best friend at that point who I'm still friends with him here and there, but we both went back to school, and the principal remembered him even though he had really bad grades and he'd be in trouble all the time. And I remember him not recognizing me, and that made me a little upset. I was like, wait a minute, it should be the opposite. He should remember me and not him. And ever since that, I started, in a way, opening up and being not necessarily putting on an act or anything, just being real, being myself, and opening up around people. And through high school, especially my last 2 years, I became very friendly with everybody, and I got along with a lot of people. But yeah, that was the story behind that.
It was just so funny because, like, I mean, we talked for like 45 minutes when you were first on, and then, like, all right, wrapped it up. And then you said that, and I was like, oh, that is gold. I wish that I was like, I have to remember that for next time. I have to remember to ask him about that because that, like, just seems to be a really clear expression of, like, how you got to be the person you are.
Yes. Me personally, um, I love being around people. That's why I love the sport too. Even if I don't make anything from it, as long as I have the people's respect and I keep doing what I love, it it, it will always be interesting to me, and I will always continue to love it until eventually I retire and at that point, I want to teach myself. I want to have a gym of my own and teach kids and not charge them a lot, because I want them to have somebody to look up to, not somebody, like you see in today's world, a lot of people look up to these big celebrities, but that's after they become big. I want to be there for those kids starting now, like from this point. That way they see me grow, and not just overnight like a sensation, but through, they get to watch me grow basically and become a man, and have somebody to look up to who does the right things, not just for the camera, but it's the real me.
So it's been about God. June is the 6th month, so it's been like 5 months since we first talked. I assume we talked in really early January.
Yes, yes, right before the fight, I believe it was close to the fight.
Yeah, like
I
a week or two out.
Yes, I'm guessing you want to ask about how it went, and
Well, I was gonna lead in with like what's been new in the last 5 months. Like what have you been up to? Are you still like fully training in Dayton, or going back and forth anywhere? Like what's been new over the last 5 months?
yes, a lot has happened in the last 4 or 5 months. Let's see. Starting out, I had the fight, and then I realized what changes I need to make. And I about the fight, I want to start out by saying it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me in my career, because I was on a win streak, I believe it was on a 4 fight win streak,
Yep.
and I was getting comfortable thinking I'm doing everything right, even though I would work on weaknesses and still and everything. I Because everything was going so well, it was kind of hard to realize all the things that I was doing wrong. I could see some things here and there, but never the whole idea of what I'm doing wrong. And basically, I made the adjustments. I've been training at a new location. In that fight, I got taken down, and for the longest time, people have been telling me, "Work on your wrestling, work on your wrestling." I used to work on my wrestling, but it would be maybe once, if I'm lucky, twice a week. But now I found a wrestling club. It's called Gladiator Wrestling Club. It's out in Xenia, Ohio. There's a coach there who's named Tyler. He's been helping me, and I've been seeing a big change. And as far as change, it's not just necessarily skill wise, but the confidence. Like going into a fight before, I would always I would always have this thing where I was like, okay, will I be ready for this situation or that situation? Now I'm confident because I've always had, my stand up be on a good level. And now my wrestling is slowly starting to come up there, and I'll be a lot more comfortable in that area. I also, other than training, now I'm running a lot more too. As far as cardio, I run a lot. There are days, for example, right now I've ran 6 days in a row. Normally, I would, for the last camp, for example, I'd be running for a few days, and then I take one day off or something. Now I just want to run as much as possible, because for cardio, I believe that helps me a lot. I've also had my wedding. I got married over the last 5 months. I went on vacation.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you very much. I went to Florida. I visited Florida for vacation. I was there for a week, and I got to take a little bit of a break and, in a way, clear my mind and get ready for what's next. And I'm very excited about this upcoming opportunity on June 26th. I took it on a little bit of a short notice, but it is at 160 pounds, so I don't have to cut as much weight. And with it being in my hometown, I could not miss out on the opportunity to take it.
All right, here. So let me back up for a bit, because you give really, really thoughtful answers,
Yes.
and you answer like 8 questions that I had, all at a time. But I want to go back to the fight with Ryan Santana.
Yes.
Very competitive matchup. You knew he was tough going in. Everybody knew that it was going to be a really tough fight, and someone was going to end up with an 0-1 professional record,
Yes.
and it wasn't going to reflect truly. I mean, both of you guys are so young still too. It was a really competitive fight. Now, you mentioned the wrestling, and finding the wrestling club in Xenia,
Yes.
not that far from me right now. I'm in Columbus right now. But so, do you think the takedowns that he was able to land, what in the second, third?
He got him in the first, second, and third round.
So, I mean, do you think that was ultimately the difference in the outcome of the fight?
Oh yeah, because on the feet it was very competitive, and I believe we were both good at putting on a good performance. If it was based on stand up, I believe I had the edge. I I landed the better shots, and what he did smart was coming into the fight. I was originally thinking we would strike for a little bit and he'd shoot for a takedown early, but he would stand up with me for 3-4 minutes, and then the last minute he would go in and take me down. And I try to defend, but with his, I feel like the what gave me a lot of trouble in that fight as far as takedowns go. I normally could defend the takedown, but with him coming in so low for the takedowns, I believe this was the first time I fought somebody shorter than me. So he used that as an advantage for himself when he would go for takedowns. Normally, if it's somebody your height or a little bit taller, you'll be able to defend it really easily. But with him being a little bit shorter and stocky, he would shoot really low. And while I'd be trying to, defend the takedown and bring him back up, by that time it would be too late because he would already take me down. So he did that really smart from his part, and he had me in a few chokes where I remember, and I swear to God, I remember thinking I'm about to pass out. I'm about to go to
See,
sleep.
that was a question that I had for late, because I rewatched the fight just last night,
Mhm.
and that guillotine at the end of the first round, I was like, how close was that? Because he was putting a lot of torque on that
Oh
one,
yeah.
and it was a real good angle for him too.
Oh yeah, because I remember when I my last loss came when in 2017 when I got put in the same type of choke where I went for a takedown, got caught, and I remember that time I didn't tap either, and I just went to sleep because it was a choke. If it was an arm or something, that's a little bit different because that could, screw your career over. But with the choke, I know there's a referee there to stop it just in case. So I don't see a point in tapping at a point like that. And I remember him going in so tight that when I got up, I believe a lot of people were telling me too because they saw me turn purple and blue. And I remember getting up and I was like, I don't know how I got out of that. And in that moment when he was choking so hard that I could hear my own heartbeat at that point. And I remember thinking like if I tap right now or go to sleep, I'm gonna let everyone down. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be letting anybody down, but it's just me, the type of person I am. That's how I feel.
You put that
I,
weight
I
on yourself, man.
yeah, I know. It's just I put a lot of pressure on myself, and because I chose this, and with me having good grades and stuff, and I didn't go to, I didn't end up going to college and pursuing a career in that. I chose this, so I want to do as good as possible to make sure I succeed. But the choke was really tight, and I remember thinking I don't want to get in it again. And guess what? I get in it again during that fight, and I go through the same thing, and I could barely hear them saying how much time is left. And I remember just surviving, trying to get out, and it would get to a point where he would get tired of holding it and me not tapping and letting go. His coaches came up to me saying, "We don't know how you survived that. We saw how tight it was, but I didn't want to lose in not in necessarily an embarrassing fashion, but I didn't want to get finished. At least I wanted to fight my heart out until the end."
So was his ground and pound having, a negative effect to where it opened up some of those choke possibilities? Because it looked like he, at least at a few points, he was landing pretty cleanly on the ground.
On the ground, I do remember. See, with what he was doing, he'd be able to take me down, and then most of the times, if he did not go for a choke, he'd have a dominant position, but he would hold it. There wasn't necessarily too many strikes, but I do remember where he hit me with a few elbows. I remember that he hit me, and then I had my mouthpiece even fall out. And then as I was once he hit me with one of those elbows, the last one he hit me with, it pissed me off, and it just gave me this energy to literally get right up. And I remember getting up, he hits me with a clean knee, which a lot of people would have probably went out from that knee, but I took it and I wanted to keep going forward and try to win the round at least. And but it was a fun back and forth fight. That's all I could say. And then I think if it were to happen again eventually down the line, which is my plan, I think it would go differently.
Dude, it's like you're looking at the little sheet I made up, because one of my questions was like, hypothetically, is this a rematch you would want? And you think that like you come out on top again if you meet again? But you answered that. I mean, I knew you'd have a confident answer.
I'll definitely. We can still talk about it. I have a lot to say. I don't mind talking. I like talking to you. Since it is you see, as an amateur, I don't want to rematch anybody, unless it was like a fight where it was really close or something. But as a professional, as fun as that fight was, I want to get in a few times, keep working on my wrestling, and progress to a point where I'll be ready the next time, a lot more ready. And I definitely have that down the line. I want to do that maybe this year, possibly early next year again.
That, and as an amateur, you're not really getting any better by rematching someone that you've already
Exactly.
beaten or lost to, really, because everybody is at such a fresh stage. But like,
Right.
I don't see a way that you could fight that guy again and not get better as a result. The thing, he was really versatile. He's really well rounded. He's got those big wiry arms that are really conducive to takedowns. He we knew that this was a matchup of two people making their professional debuts that were both really, really tough. Both have a lot of promise, and one is going to come out on top. And but that was you know. So going back to your success on
But
the feet,
but honestly, with that fight, going back to what you just said, one
yeah,
person coming out on top, with how good the fight was, I remember kicking him, and
you
you
both
know,
won.
yeah, with him just picking his leg up from the pain and not going down. And then I remember hitting him and tagging him and everything, and just him coming forward. And that he, after the fight in the interview, he said, I have the mentality of kill or be killed. And then I feel like I had the same mentality that way. That's why it turned out to be such a good fight. And that is why the next one will be even more fun, because I know he's training. He said he wanted to stay active, but he hasn't had a fight yet since that. I have plans of fighting on this card, and then there will be another premiere show in August, most likely. They always have a show in August. I'm trying to get on that too. I was supposed to take a fight in July in Pennsylvania. I wanted to go out there and take a fight, but I
Would that
guess
be for CFFC?
no, 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 no.
Okay,
There
I was just
was a
wondering because I
different
know they do a
company.
lot of stuff in
There was a
Pennsylvania.
different company. It was called Art of War or something,
Oh yeah.
and they wanted they were gonna set up a fight. But I guess as an amateur, you can take a couple fights. But I didn't know that as a pro, if you sign one contract, you're supposed to finish that, and then you can take another one. So I ended up accepting the fight, but I had already signed this contract for the June card, and so I'm gonna go from here. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so in those stand-up exchanges with Santana, you guys were blasting each other's legs, and I think at first it looked like you were kind of wearing more of the damage, but later in the fight it looked like he was the one whose legs were more compromised. Um, Take me through, the leg kicks that both that you received and doled out in that fight, because they were a big difference maker. If not just when he realized that his leg was compromised, that then he decides to shoot for a takedown.
I feel like that when it comes to kicks, especially in the beginning of the fight, I believe he had more success with it, because I had a lot of pressure with it being a professional fight. I wanted to see how I feel, and I wanted to make sure I didn't throw everything right away. I wanted to test myself and see what I can do in the first 5 minutes, with it, with a professional fight being 5 instead of 3 minutes as an amateur. I Once he started with the leg kicks and I started to see he's having success with it, I started throwing it back too. At first it started with I wanted to, honestly, because I knew he was going to go for takedowns and stuff. I wanted to use more of my hands, but once he started kicking me, it's a thing where you're like, oh yeah, watch me now, and then I started kicking him, and next thing you know, I, I start hurting him with it. But I feel like that's what started the takedowns in a way, because his legs started hurting and he would go for the takedown and try to win the round.
And I
Does it
feel like,
hurt? It hurts a
yeah.
lot, because I remember right after the fight, I thought I broke my leg from kicking him that much, but I couldn't walk for a few days. I know that I had bruising and my foot was swollen, but other than that, there were no injuries or anything. I wonder how he felt, because I know he was in a lot more pain as far as the leg goes. He's a respectful guy, though. I like him. We talked after that, and
Yeah, I saw that you guys like, seem to have a really respectful exchange of words. I think that both of you expressed great respect for your opponent before the fight and after. Uh, did you started landing? I think you had the power advantage in this fight. I think you probably had more of the knockout capability, or at least the damaging strike capability.
I think so too.
Yeah, and you started landing those big counter shot that I think it was that big overhand right when he would come in, and you
Mhm.
were punishing him for those attempts. And it was because early in the fight it seemed like he was more, pushing forward. Game planning for the fight, did you think that would be the case?
Oh yeah, I knew he would be the pressure fighter. Even if he took a shot or he was giving the shot, he would be the one coming forward. That is one adjustment I do want to make, because I've realized that in all of my fights, I'm a counter striker, and almost all my opponents have gotten tired while I'm backing up. Now I'm thinking to myself, if I pressure them, how are they going to be able to handle that? So for this new fight, that's the change I want to make. I want to go forward, attack, use every skill I have going forward, not just backwards. Because of course, if the opponent pressures me, I can handle that really well. I can take a shot really well if I have to. But now I want to be the pressure fighter. I want to try that out and see how that works.
And I think that is, a big, adjustment, considering you've had a lot of success with fights that go to the judges' scorecards. And
Yes.
you've had a lot of fights that do go to decision, and you've lost some of those, but you've won the better majority. And it seems like, I mean, just from a decision standpoint, that octagon control is a factor. You can't necessarily control whether your shots are landing or their shots are landing or the takedowns are going, but that is still a factor in the scoring. And when you go to the judges scorecards as often as you do, and you're fighting the caliber of opponents that you have been facing, that's going to make a measurable difference.
Yes. So far, honestly, like I don't think I've had any opponent where you can just I know from the side it looks like, okay, if I hit them one more time or two more times, they would go out or something. It's just that whenever they fight me, it's like they turn out so much better than they already were. They're, especially with them being so young in their career, you can go watch their last fight or something, and then you watch them a few months later and they've already made so much more adjustments. That's why it's hard to game plan for amateurs and stuff. Now as a pro, I have more footage to look at, and it's a little bit easier to game plan. But when I fight them, they're just so tough. They're in the top of the weight class, and they usually turn out to be a back and forth fight. But I do believe, I'm very confident that my next fight, if everything goes as planned, I should be able to get a finish, because I do see myself getting him tired to a point where I can finish the fight.
So, I mean, we've talked about this your last fight a decent amount. I know that I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on what you take away from it. So, what are the big main points, both technically and philosophically, that you're going to take away from your professional debut?
For my professional debut, one thing I can say is it's in the past, and all I can do is move forward as a man. And had I been younger, I would have sat there and either try to find the reason why I lost or something.
You're
But
22, man. You're super young.
I know,
You
I
know,
know. But I've been in this. This is my in the summer. It's going to be my fifth year fighting now, I believe. It started in 2016, so yeah, almost 5 years, and I've had a decent amount of fights. And I, the only thing I can say is losing before I'd have, I'd get depressed and I would assume, it's over and stuff. Right now, I that loss to me was much better than me even winning a title or anything because I've made the right adjustments. I've realized what I need to do in order to go forward. Because had I won that fight, I'd continue to do the same mistakes I was making, and I would think I'm doing good just because I'm on a win streak. Now my eyes are wide open and I can see everything and get better and continue to have success.
in your 5 years of fighting and all the amateur fights you racked up, it's a little misleading. You have more experience than an amateur who has that many fights over that span at the age of 22 because you had so many fights go the distance and you have so much cage time as an
Oh,
amateur and now as a professional. You've had that just ultimately leads to the things that experience is good for. How to weather trials and tribulations throughout a fight, how to deal with you know cardio and your energy levels later in the fight, and how to make adjustments throughout. That kind of experience is invaluable, and you've packed it in to a synchro where a lot of people rise to those amateur ranks and they're doing it in these smaller promotions, getting first round knockouts against people that aren't really good measuring sticks for their ability.
yeah, yeah. I fought a lot of tough guys, and honestly, you're right about that. I could, what a lot of people do is they'll fight guys that they can already beat, and they're not nervous about that fight unless they get knocked out by a lucky punch or something. Then they have 100% chance of winning it. I, I don't feel those kind of fights are really good for you, and eventually you're going to end up fighting somebody who's going to be really tough, and they're going to end up embarrassing you. So also another thing about the last fight. See, I used to not necessarily really believe in superstitions or something, but I remember thinking like, okay, if I do this on the day of the weigh-ins and then the day of the fight, if I do this or that, the fight will go my way. I remember believing in stupid stuff like that and thinking, okay, it will go my way because I did everything right, you know and believe it or not, last fight I did everything I was supposed to do as far as like superstitions go, and it didn't go my way. So thank God that didn't happen. And the only thing I need to do is believe in the hard work I put in, believe in God, and that's it. I don't need superstitions or you know a lot of people will have things where they're like, oh, if I do this on that day, I'm lucky on this. I don't think it works like that. I don't think
Yeah,
luck
I agree. I also do not think it works like. I think there's something to keeping a routine. I think there's a difference between the kind of physiological stability provided by following the route, going through a routine on a big day like that. But like, no, there's no magical force through just the sheer action of like wearing a particular pair of socks that makes it more
right,
likely that
right.
you'll win. And it doesn't take away the fact that like when you're in a fight, it's going to be a war and you're going to have to figure things out.
Exactly. So it's better to go with the flow, not just in this career and stuff, but just in life, like flow with things and enjoy life and be positive no matter what. And I feel like life is a lot better because if you go into something, whether it's a career, life with stress, no matter what happens, you're gonna end up being stressed at the end of it. But if you go in positive, you come out of the even if it doesn't go your way, you come out of it positive, and that's my new mentality now.
All right. So your next fight is going to be on June 26th. It's going to be in the B2 Fighting Series 125. It's going to be in your hometown of Dayton, Ohio. It's going to be against 27-year-old Darnell Truett. And as you informed me, it's going to be at 160 pounds. I don't know
Yes.
if you know this, but this is a Dayton guy versus an Akron, Ohio guy. Interesting matchup. And so, first of all, what I know you touched on how the fight came to be, but how did the fight with B2 come to be? I'm sure it was convenient considering the show's going to be in Dayton.
Yes. So basically, for the last few years, I've been fighting for Premiere. I didn't have a contract with them or anything, but anytime they would have a show and I was available, I would try to stay active. And then, with the whole COVID thing in 2020, they didn't have any show. So I didn't get to be active at all. I had a fight scheduled, but then it got canceled because of COVID. So this year, made a promise to myself to catch up on as many as possible. This next one will be my 11th fight in the last 5 years, which it's not bad. That's an average of about 2 fights a year. And that's only because of the whole 2020 of not having any fight, or else I want to average 3 to 4 fights a year at least. And I waited for Premiere to have a show in May, and since they couldn't book a venue, I wanted to basically. I saw that B2 Fighting Series was coming out here, and with it being in my hometown, I had to take it. Whether it's short notice or whatever weight it was, I wanted to take it and fight in front of the people, because the last time I fought here, it was in 2016. And then at the convention center, believe it or not, a few years back, I went to a concert. There was a Turkish pop star, I believe, singer. He was here and he's very popular. He came out here and I remember sitting there, and I don't think I had even fought at that point. I was getting ready to have either my debut or something like that. And I remember sitting there and thinking, I want to be able to do this and have the people come out and watch me. And now it's becoming a reality. I know it's not a big, super big show, but it's something that I had on my bucket list. And even if it's minor, I love the fact that I get to accomplish it this month.
I've seen B2 before. I feel like there's been, I feel like I recognize the name for sure.
Yes,
When I
they're a
saw it.
really big show in this area, especially, and they're now, I believe, they're doing shows all across the U.S. So they've had guys make it onto the UFC and everything all the time.
Yeah, because they're like owned by like a bigger kind of entertainment company, aren't they?
I don't know too much about them. I just know that they have a lot of eyes on them. I know you get noticed with them if you end up doing really good with them.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that, on other guys' pedigrees and records before. And, you know, so that kind of brings me to your opponent, Darnell Truett. I've done some research, since we set up this time to talk,
Yes.
and very interesting style, very interesting outcomes of his fights. But one
Yes.
thing I will say, he has been tested in some decent promotions. I know he was an Iron Tiger, Cage Thunder, recognizable, but definitely smaller regional shows. But then also AFC, most recently, that's where he made his pro debut. He also lost his pro debut, but that was by round one knockout to a guy named Trevor Peak in Alabama Fighting Championship. That's AFC, definitely a recognizable promotion. BCM Promotions and Shamrock Showdown. This is a guy and he's 27. And that's still pretty young for a guy coming up in MMA. But
Right.
you're ridiculously young for a guy with this much experience in MMA. So he's a little. I mean, just anatomically, he's closer to like a muscular peak that you get to like around 30. But 27 years old, his style's Muay Thai, but his only finishes have come by submission, weirdly. And
Right.
with the other ones coming by, he also has a decent amount of fights go to decision. He's been finished before. Um,
I,
is the other thing. It's just it's very unusual. He's a very wiry, athletic guy. I've seen him his Muay Thai fights too. You know, he has very fluid, dynamic stand up, but his fights just seem to go a weird route each time.
Yes, as far as the opponent goes, I remember the promoter messaged me saying there's a guy who wants to take it at 160 and he's 0-1 as a pro. I looked him up. I saw his fighting style. I thought it would make sense against me, and I accepted within the next, I believe, 10, 15 minutes after I believe I watched just one or two fights, and I remember thinking this will turn out to be perfect against my style because I believe I fight like that where I can adjust to people, and his style is very weird. So it, it will be a perfect fight. And will it be as tough as my pro debut? I don't know because every fight is different, and styles make fights. So I can't wait to see what this one turns out like. He is a tough fighter. I believe his stand up is his strongest point. I believe my stand up is my strongest point. So most likely the fight will be standing. But if it were to go to the ground, I'd be a lot more ready now than I've ever been.
I don't know, like in viewing his fights, if you kind of picked up on this, like, or if you got this impression that I did or not, but like, it seems like, he gets controlled on the ground for a good amount of minutes. When he's on the ground,
Yeah.
he's controlled for big stretches of minutes at a time. But then, like, he kind of with his grappling has been able to turn some of those situations
Yes,
around.
and get
Very
up.
intriguing.
I feel like when they do end up taking him down, I have seen the same thing, where when he gets taken down, he is held down, but then he'll find a way to somehow either reverse it and get on top, or you'll end up in a weird position where you're risking getting choked or something. And I know with him turning professional, he knows a choke or two at least, and that's all it takes to win a fight. So I have to be very careful, no matter if it's the second round, third round, whatever round it is. And there's 10, 15 seconds left, even. I believe anytime in MMA or boxing or whatever it is, you can get finished. So I have to be very smart and very careful.
He debuted as an amateur just 4 months prior to you in 2016 in IT Fight Series.
Yes, yes, yes. And then I debuted for them in summer of 2016. I did see that. He has a little bit, I believe, a fight or two more than me, but that is because I wasn't very active this past year. Other than that, I believe we're both about the same experience. I've probably, as far as the amateur career goes, I've probably had a better one, but we both got to turn pro, and we'll see how it goes from now on.
Another thing I that I got the impression of in watching his fights is that while his kickboxing is very sleek, and I think that, you know, he probably has power just because he seems to be fast and explosive. And
Right.
I feel like, in comparing both of your kickboxing styles, I think that like the advantage that he would have in this fight is probably in the athleticism department. I don't know if like one of the top terms I would describe your fighting style as is like explosive. I think it's more technical, but it's also more, go with the flow and react. And
Right.
I feel like he is when I watched one of the fights, I thought it was on fast forward. The way he was kind of scrambling from the takedown attempts and exploding off the ground some of the strikes he threw.
Yes, he as far as athletic goes, um, for the explosive side of it, he's probably more explosive because if I wanted to go out there and just swing or something, it would probably look the same way. But I like to, with my style being countering most of the time, I wait to see an opportunity open up, and then I don't wait there the whole time. I if I see that the fight's not active, I'll start going forward. But most of the times, that's how I fight, and that's what's interesting for me too, because with him being so athletic, I do believe a lot of people will assume that's what will get him the win. I've already had family members, tell me, why'd you accept the fight? He looks a lot bigger than you. Typical what typical people will say, and we'll just have to see how it goes because I feel like he will be explosive, but only for a short period of time. I don't think he could have the same energy I have for those 15 minutes. He could be explosive, maybe let's say the first round or something, but I have, the cardio and I have that technical ability the whole 15 minutes. That's the biggest difference.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's fought at lightweight, at least going back as far as I can tell in his,
Yeah, he is a
in his
bigger guy. He's 6 foot tall, I believe.
yeah, so I wonder, what is the going to be the effect of him being there at 160 as compared to you being there at 160? I mean, I know that it was a convenient thing for you. You didn't have to cut a lot of weight. If any, not sure what you're walking around at the moment, but what do you think the effects are going to be of this being a fight at 160 as opposed to 155 for a guy that is probably the bigger guy?
He, regardless if it was at 55, 45, whatever it was, he was going to be the bigger guy. I'm almost always the smaller guy. Even in my last fight, although Ryan was smaller, I believe he probably still weighed more than me because I remember I weighed in at 54 and I walked in, I believe I was 161, maybe 62. So I didn't put a lot of weight, even though I had 24 hours. Um, in this fight, of course, I'll be the smaller guy, but I'll perform really good still. My debut, I fought a guy who was, I believe, 6'2", 6'3". I ended up beating him. I fought at 170 before. My next fight after this once this one goes, we'll see how it goes. And then I'm taking it at 170. Um, so I'm gonna bounce around in the weight. It doesn't really bother me that much. The only reason why I took it at 60 was because it was a little bit short notice. And I know that last 5 pounds would make a big difference. I would have to suffer a little more to make the weight. So I at least wanted to have that be a little bit easier on my body.
Okay, so you are planning for your next fight to be at 170. Why is that? Or, just is the plan to just bounce around, or is there something more specific you're looking to do?
Well, we had talks with Billy for a premiere show.
Shout out to
I
Billy from your
Yeah,
MMA.
yeah, for Premier MMA. We basically he's getting ready. Whenever he announces a date, I'm only waiting for that, and then I believe he has an opponent for me at 170. So
Oh, you're trying to fight at 170 on that August show.
yes,
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, then a fight at 160, especially at short notice, makes a ton of sense.
yes. Because I could honestly, if I wanted, I could probably make 45 easily. If I make lifestyle changes, I could easily be at 45. With my career going, I'm either going to have to put on a little bit of muscle for 55 or find a way to cut down to 45 because I could probably do it easily. I'm just fighting guys that are a lot bigger and and then with me being younger, they're already like a 27-year-old will obviously be closer to his prime than I am, and but I still believe that I'm not at a disadvantage because I do well in situations where the opponents are stronger or bigger.
Yeah, you're gonna be about 3 inches shorter, I think, than Darnell Truett. Do you know what your official reach is? Because it's not on Topology, and his isn't either. But I know he's got a long frame. But do you know what your reach is at?
To be honest, I wouldn't know the exact measurement because I haven't checked in a while, but I do have pretty long arms, so I should be able to. And I use my reach really well. Uh, with my style being countering, I know eventually he's gonna have to come in, or even if he's fighting from distance, I can adjust to every style because I've sparred with a lot of guys who, for example, for this fight, I'm sparring two welterweights, one professional, one amateur, who are also fighting on that day. One guy, he's making his amateur debut. His name is Graham, and then the other one is Shomer, who's fighting in the co-main event. He's a 170
Are these
pounder.
teammates in
Yeah,
Dayton?
Yes. They're in Dayton. We go to the wrestling club together, and we trained at Dayton Vision MMA together also. So after wrestling practice, I'll spar with them, and they have reach on me and size and everything. But I do really well against them, and I help them out. They help me out, and I've never had an issue with the reach because I can use my reach really well.
Yeah, it seems like, while you are, you're going to be shorter than a lot of people that you fight at 155 and up, at the least. It seems like a pretty high percentage of your body length is in the arms and legs, and then the smaller percentage is kind of in the midsection. Because your kicks don't usually have a problem finding the range, and neither do your counter punches.
Right. I do love using the kicks a lot too. That's one thing I want to keep working on. I believe that helps a lot when I can't, let's say the opponent, is using the reach well. Kicks always work because I can close the distance with them. I can use them to get damage, sometimes just to score points. But most of the times when I throw kicks, I'm looking to do damage with them. I haven't been able to, for example, the last fight, I didn't really get to use a lot of anything spinning, but that's one thing I want to continue doing. I used to throw a lot of head kicks, spinning kicks, and stuff. With somebody trying to wrestle with you, it's a kind of a stupid idea to try to do anything spinning because it opens up takedowns. But I'll be able to show new things in this fight, I feel like.
All right, so how do you think you're going to be different, again, technically and philosophically, coming into this fight than you were going into your professional debut?
I had a lot of unknowns. I didn't know how I was going to feel as in the debut. I didn't know. I had more pressure on me too at that point. Right now, I've already gotten past that first fight. Of course, there's the risk of what if I lose two in a row, but I'm not thinking like that. I want to think positive. I want to think, okay, I'm going to win this and nothing else. In that past fight, I had the fear of, okay, what happens if I lose? I know this is a tough guy. What if I lose? Of course, with each fight, there's a chance of losing, but you can go in a lot more positive and a lot more confident. And I believe that will be the biggest difference this time. Of course, skill wise, I've improved, and mentally, I'm in a better place right now than I have been in a long time.
A friend just sent me a clip of Chael Sonnen talking to his team when he was coaching the Ultimate Fighter.
Yes,
And he said, a bunch of people always say that failure is not an option. Of course, failure is always an option. You can always fail, but it's a choice. You know,
yes.
th- well, I mean, I'm a big Chael Sonnen fan. I don't know
Oh,
about
I
you,
am
but
too.
like, yeah, I think that is extremely, that's not an idea that's that clearly expressed like that too often.
Right, because see, a lot of people in life fail, but if you when it becomes a failure is if you stay in that position, if you continue to stay. If I got stuck on the pro debut and I stayed in that position and I kept thinking, oh my god, I lost this, and continued to stress about it, I would not move forward. But to move forward, you have to accept that it didn't go your way, and now you just got to move forward.
Yeah, it's like when, a UFC fan favorite, let's say like a guy like Joe Lozon, Diego Sanchez, Clay Guida, someone like that.
Right,
They're riding a 4-fight losing streak into a fight.
right.
And people are saying like, oh, like it would be great if they won. It basically trying to will themselves to say like he can't lose because it would be too it would it's a better story if he win, and we really want. But that's not like how we're all that's going to matter when the door closes is that those two guys are going to fight, and the guy that is more prepared and more able to do that night is the one that's going to win.
Yes,
uh, it was we've seen that a lot lately, like when fighters in their personal lives have something like traumatic or tragic or just disruptive happen. It's like,
yes.
oh, it's like it would be a great story if this guy won, everybody's rooting for them tonight. It's like,
Right,
I don't,
with the
that
heavyweight.
doesn't mean that anything's gonna that doesn't change anything that's
They,
gonna happen about a fight.
I feel like the reason they do that is for example, recently I believe there was a heavyweight in the UFC. Walt Harris, I believe his was it
Yeah, that's who I was kind of having in
the,
mind. But like, there was a few other kids, but definitely Walt Harris was the big one.
when he was fighting, I believe it was with Overeem. A lot of people knew he had not that big of a chance, but at the same time they were rooting for him. Why? Because he had experienced something difficult in his life, and they, of course, they wanted to see him win, that to at least get some type of relief, from all that stress he went through. So the reason people pick those people, you know to win, is because they themselves go through a lot of stress and they want to see that person make it, and especially if it's their favorite fighter or whatever it is.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of pressure to put on somebody. It's like
Right.
now, not only do you have to prepare for a fight while dealing with something tragic, but you're now carrying the hopes and well wishes of these millions of Twitter followers. That doesn't seem like a good a good mental factor going into a fight against one of the greatest heavyweight kickboxers of all time.
Right. It definitely will affect you if you go into a fight with that much pressure. Because think about it, they fight in front of millions of people, who get to watch the replay, and that's millions more people, So they already go into a fight with a lot of pressure, being judged from people basically who have never done it. Some of them just sit there and judge and everything. So now he has even more pressure, because if he does bad, he he's worse than he already was or something. That's how they basically put it.
Yeah, I would think that kind of emotional burden, it's like, I don't know. Did you catch the Cody Garbrandt Rob Font fight?
Yes.
Cody had that big, you know, monkey wrench thrown in the way of his bout with COVID. And he was coming into it, saying like, I'm good. Everything's up to, it's like, dude, I think you're so tough that you're not going to tell us what's really going on. You're not ready to do this fight. And I think those are almost of how strong of an influence physically like that was for a guy like Cody Garbrandt. I think it is just as strong on the mental / emotional side in Walt Harris's case.
Right. For somebody on that level, most of the times physically they'll always be ready. The only thing that affects them would be something, mentally, like that, like coming off what he came off, or any. You see, we like to think that just because they're, on that level, that they don't go through struggles or sicknesses or whatever it is, but they do. And they, when they have the whole pressure of the whole world and their sponsors and everything, I feel like sometimes they take it just to get in there, and they risk getting a loss against a guy who probably couldn't even beat them if they were at their best.
Yeah, the MMA world is not like a fairy tale ending world. If it was, DC and Misha Tate would be 2-0 against their biggest rivals. It's there's so many things. It's a young man's game. It's a sport where you can lose 8 in a row if you happen, to not be the better fighter on 8 straight nights. And so I think that, like,
One
your
example would
approach,
be
you're sharing a lot of that.
One example would be Charles Oliveira. I am sure you saw his fight against
Right.
Michael.
I was going to ask you about that because, he, came into the game super young as well.
I don't remember what his record was at featherweight. I believe he had 10 wins, 8 losses or something. But basically, he had a decent amount of losses, decent amount of wins. But here he is now as a world champion in the biggest organization. So if he had quit back then, he would never know what potential he had. And he just kept fighting. And here he is now.
I mean, from an MMA fan's perspective, that is just an indictment of like, dude, we wrote this guy off like 5 times, and 5 times each were way too early. I mean, we're talking, with guys like Charles Oliveira, we're writing off and making huge blanket assumptions about how much heart someone has or dedication someone
Right.
has, when they're 25 years old. and that's absolutely insane. And it did feel like a bit. Oliveira was going to be a gigantic featherweight anyway because he's a pretty big lightweight in the first place. And you did kind of put him on like that Edson Barboza level for a while. Like he'll hang around the top of the rank.
Exactly. Yes.
The
Yes. Yes.
upper echelon, but you never thought he'd break through. And certainly after the Kevin Lee wins and the Tony Ferguson win, I thought at least he was going to get passed over because there's so much big money making potential and star power at 155. But he gets that shot against Michael Chandler. He was tested significantly in the fight.
First round.
Very a blink away from getting finished, and comes back and finishes it on his own turn, and has looked. I mean, really, from like the Tony Ferguson has been like a good luck charm to some people. To Gaethje and Charles Oliveira in those fights, they performed in those fights looking better in that
Than they
fight
ever
than their
have.
last fight than I've ever seen any other fighter look.
Right.
I don't know. Oliveira, I know that, you know, still even as champion, he's being overlooked because the eyes are on Connor Dustin 3, the eyes are on what Gaethje's going to do, all those other potential, big money fights that can happen. But like, I don't see why Charles Oliveira couldn't possibly beat all of them at the rate that he is ascending.
Oh yeah, because he keeps improving, and of course he has a chance. For example, in the Michael Chandler fight, I was watching it live. I remember seeing the first round, and I'm thinking, oh, this looks like the Oliveira from the featherweight. Where he would, if it didn't go his way, he wouldn't dig deep to secure a win. And then next thing you know, the second round starts, and all it took was one or two shots to change the whole fight.
I'm a big Michael Chandler fan too. I mean, when
Oh
he
yeah,
was in
I was kind
Bellator,
of sad when it happened because I was honestly in that fight I was rooting for Michael Chandler because he had just came into the UFC, had a good debut, and I wanted to see what would happen if he had won. But now I believe they're trying to set him up with Justin Gaethje, so that should be a really fun fight.
that's a great fight. And the thing about Michael Chandler, people thought they knew, and he was heavily slept on going into that fight. People thought they knew, like, all right, yeah, 3-time Bellator champion, whatever that meant. It's not just that. One, Bellator's 155-pound division has always been really strong,
Yes,
but he beat Eddie Alvarez and Ben Henderson, two people that were the UFC lightweight champion. And when he beat them, were arguably they were the number one lightweight in the world. He beat them at the top, and I think Michael Chandler has been even still after his first two UFC fights. I don't think he's getting enough respect for really how close he was to being the lightweight champion in that fight. Um, and the fact that this guy has been probably a top 10, maybe even top 5 lightweight off and on for many years at this point.
I think he's about especially if he wins his next fight. I think he's right back in the title picture, and he will be respected, especially now that he's in the UFC and he had that win against Dan Hooker. I think he has a little bit more respect because they see that okay, he was able to win, and let's not forget that he went against Charles Oliveira, who was finishing guys left and right. So I don't think it's that big of a step down as far as his recognition goes now.
No, and he's just an athletic freak.
Oh
He's huge, very strong, but his explosion, like he's like the lightweight Brock Lesnar.
yes, I do agree with that.
Do you have like a manager or like management at all, or does this just flow through like you and your camp, like any potential
Honestly,
upcoming fights?
for the fights, I normally, if I stay with the like when I was fighting for Premier, I have a good connection with Billy, so he'll find me an opponent, text me, and I accept it. But I believe after this if I especially have a fight in August, I'm gonna end up signing a contract with the management team because there is one in mind that I have. They get a lot of guys into Bellator and stuff, and there's a lot of promotions in Pennsylvania. The one you mentioned, I believe it's called Cage for Fury.
Yeah.
I do think I can get a fight with them if I have a good management team, and I want to sign a contract this year.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, I also had on the show a fighter by the name of Jasmine Jizduvicius. And she had a good stretch in Cage Fury, and she's going to be on the Contender Series this upcoming fall.
The, you see, and does she have a management team?
Yeah, it's actually Dodge Sports. It's a lot of the other fighters that I've interviewed so far have all come from Dodge Sports, from somebody I happen to meet on Twitter. So yeah, that's her management team is Dodge Sports, and they've got another guy. Uh, I want to get I think it's Aaron Jeffrey, who also had a string of wins in Cage Fury, and he's going to be on the Contender Series this fall. And if you can believe it, him and Jasmine are roommates. So and train with the same team. So everything linking up good for those two.
Exactly. I'm very happy for them, especially, I'm sure they had a long road to make it to there. So if things are going their way, I wish them the best. Anybody doing the sport, I wish them the best. Everybody in life, I wish them all the best, in success and good health. Because I respect people like that, especially, when they're working for things they want. I respect anyone like that, no matter if they're amateur, pro, or contender series, whatever it is. If they're working for it, there's no way you cannot respect that.
Well, that's why like MMA is such a unique sport is that every UFC card, every season of The Ultimate Fighter, every Contender Series episode, we're seeing people achieve their dreams. It's not like, a one night thing like the NBA draft, guys get with their teams, or like when someone wins a championship, it's like we're seeing this every weekend, or guys like, wow, I never thought I'd be here. I've only wanted this for as long as I can remember. I'm here, and now I make new dreams.
Yes, see, I feel like here it takes a little bit longer sometimes, but if you keep working for it, eventually you get somewhere. Even if it's not the UFC, you'll get into a bigger company. Whether it's Bellator or whatever the company may be, you'll end up eventually getting a contract. And for me personally, to go to that level, if you told me right now, hey, there's this opportunity coming up, if it was for Bellator or whatever, as a man, I would accept it, but as a competitor, I feel like I still need a lot more work to make it there, you know? And I have to admit that, because going into a company like that, if you feel like you're not ready yet, if you have any type of weakness, that's already that's already not good for you. So
Yeah,
right now, I'm gonna do my best this year. With the following I have, I feel like I will get noticed a lot easier, but I still need to put in the work, because those people cannot fight for me, and those people can only continue to support me as long as I'm doing good. And one thing I hate about MMA that I wish would change, but that's the way life is anyways. When you're on top, everyone wants to be, supporting you. If, for example, uh my last win, you know, I posted a picture on Instagram. It had probably almost 3,000 likes. La- I post the lost one, it got three times less. Why? Because it didn't go my way. That just proves to you that people support you when you're doing really good, and they're sucking up to you and everything, and they want to make sure, if they see you doing good and they expect you to go far, they want to make sure that they're there for that, so they can say, hey, I've been supporting you all along.
yeah, and to that effect, it's you know the support and social media following that contribute, and the team that you have, the management team, that contributes to the shots you get. But at the end of the day, it's just what spectacles sell. entertainment. So at the end of the day, pro sports is professional and on a paid basis
Right.
because it is entertaining to a lot of people. And so, and we're reminded of that more than ever, in this era of these celebrity boxing matches. I'm sure you know that Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather just occurred over the past
Yes, yes,
week.
yes. I actually watched it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, like, I mean, my God, we saw Chad Johnson in the ring. Jake Paul, beat
With
Ben
Charlie.
Askren, preparing for Woodley. The Logan Paul fight, and then there's these like even weirder ones: YouTube versus TikTok boxing card.
Yeah, that one is coming up.
Yeah,
I was talking about it the other day. I was running with my brother. I don't really, know any of those people that much, other than the fact that like I'll see a press conference here and there. I'm not a big like I'll sit on Instagram or something, but it is to post my fight or watch what my the close friends are doing or something like that. But as far as knowing those people, I knew Logan Paul and Jake Paul, especially when they started doing the whole boxing thing. And when I was running, I was thinking to myself, if I had an opportunity, to fight somebody, one of those people that are TikTok or YouTuber just fighting now, if they wanted to start out with somebody with less experience and build their way up or something, I would take an opportunity like that. And in a way,
definitely 100 times out of 100 for the money that these fights seem to command. I mean, there's one thing to what how legitimate are those fight, all that noise, but it's a life-changing amount of money, and
oh yeah, and
it's
even
silly to not to not buy in if you have the
and
opportunity.
I know they're making millions, but I swear if they paid me 100,000 even right now, I would take it, because beating one of those people who you know has such a large following in the social media world, you're guaranteed you don't have to ever fight again after that, because you'll be having so many sponsorship deals, you'll be having everything will just be going your way basically, as far as sports goes, and money and everything. it, I don't know. Maybe if an opportunity like that ever pops up, you never know. Some people get lucky. I've seen a lot of people that aren't supposed to make it to where they are. They make it just because they have the right people around them. The right opportunity pops up. So you just have to continue working and then see what opportunities show up.
I just never thought like it seems like the whole world right now is focused on boxing because of these fights. And it's like, I never thought that, like, when we'd be talking about like a possible revitalization of boxing, it would be because all these like 18-year-old TikTok weirdo like people are beefing with each other and have decided that the most profitable platform to take it to would be a boxing ring. It's
Right.
just it's so out of left field, but it seems like I mean, it stirs up strong emotions in people,
Me
general public and fight fans, at the
me
same time.
personally, I don't like it when other fighters are complaining. You'll have, whether it's boxers, MMA fighters, or whoever it is. Oh, this fight doesn't make sense. You know, it's it's a embarrassment to boxing or whatever it is. I personally don't think so, because it has put a lot more eyes into not just boxing but into the MMA world too, and now more people are interested and they want to see if they are capable of doing it. Of course, it looks bad if somebody who doesn't put any work into boxing or something goes in and they don't know what they're doing. At that point, yes, it looks embarrassing. But if it's somebody like, for example, I know a lot of people hate Jake Paul and he's this and that. Does he talk? Yes. But is he backing it up so far? Yes. Maybe he hasn't fought somebody who, everyone is thinking, oh, is a legit boxer or something. But he is still putting in the work, and, you know, he's doing something positive. He's putting it into a sport. He's bringing in new eyes. I don't see why that should be a problem.
I don't like Jake Paul either. And, I was never familiar with any of these YouTube or TikTok personalities. That's just not my world. But this denial that's going on about whether Jake Paul's win over Ben Askren means anything, like, is insane. because at the end of the day, Ben Askren was still a combat athlete who was an MMA champion in 2 major promotions over an extended period of years, beat a ton of really good fighters. He was in his MMA camp preparing for fights every day. I know he sparred. I know he wasn't just working his double leg. And then, to top that off, he was preparing for that fight at Wild Card with Freddie Roach. And
Exactly.
this is a combat athlete who knows how to navigate fights, who is getting some of the best boxing instruction that's available on planet Earth. And Jake Paul, a YouTuber, beat him. That is insane. Regardless of Ben Askren's striking acumen, that is insane.
I think the win was legit, and they need to put a little bit more respect. It's just that his personality, people don't like it, but that is what's selling pay per view. And why not? He's an entertainer, and if it means more money in his bank, if he's pissing people off and they're waiting to see him knocked out, then that's what he's going to continue doing. And I'm sure even if, let's say, he gets knocked out in August by Woodley, I don't think he's going to end up quitting, especially with him having a contract. He's going to continue fighting, and he is putting in the work. So there is no way you can disrespect that. Like in the Floyd and Logan fight, it wasn't, too entertaining, but at the same time, I remember thinking like, okay, what is going to happen? I do want to watch it. A lot of people will complain, and they stream it illegally anyway. So I don't know why they're complaining. Just watch it, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. If you do, it's totally up to you if you're going to watch it or not.
It's just so crazy because like everybody just sounds like a broken record. It's like you're complaining about the quality of Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. When, if I remember correctly, you're the same people complaining about every single Floyd Mayweather pay-per-view dating back to the Oscar de la Hoya fight. Floyd has never, people have always, been chirping about like how the entertainment value is not worth the big price tag of the pay-per-views. They seem to be the ones still buying them and complaining. Floyd did to Logan Paul, for the most part, what he did to like all of his opponents in these major pay-per-views.
Exactly. I mean, fights like this are going to continue to happen, especially now after that one. And people are just going to have to adjust to the fact that it's what is happening, and what is going to be continuing to happen. So they can complain all they want. Mayweather made his money. Logan Paul made his money. So they're happy,
So, did you happen to catch PFL last night?
I saw I got to see a little bit of the main event. I saw the results. She won by TKO. I was happy to see that. I wanted to see how that was gonna go. I did hear that I watched the highlights, so I heard she lost the first 2 rounds, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Was it bad?
Oh, it was like, she, when they were on the feet, she was landing and you could tell her punches were doing damage. But the thing is, Brittany Elkin is that wasn't a can. That's not who a lot of people transitioning to the sport brand new have to face in their professional debut. Brittany Elkin has fought some of the top women at 145 pounds. And, after some exchanges, she took her down. She was able to get to mount. She threw up a lot of submission attempts. That happened, through the first 2 rounds. Brittany Elkin was in full mount, side control, raining down some ground and pound. She was close to some armbar attempts, but Clarissa Shields had such an athleticism advantage. She kept getting up. And, I think Brittany Elkin was hurt going into that 3rd round, but Clarissa Shields, with her, top of the line, unmatched killer instinct, I think smelled that out. She rained down like what seemed like 100 punches, and ended up getting the TKO. But to me, that was 1,000 times more impressive than if she came out and got an early knockout. She weathered the storm of getting taken down, mounted, submission attempts. In every other case we've seen with a boxer transitioning to MMA, that's when they quit. That's when the conditioning that they are ready for is too out of line with the conditioning needed for MMA. And, she's only used to 2-minute rounds, not 5-minute rounds,
Right.
but she weathered that storm, survived the submissions, defended some takedowns, and then ends up getting a third round TKO. I thought that was extremely impressive. For a division we thought was going to be gone a couple months ago, I have never been more excited about women's featherweight.
I personally think that you're right, and her winning in the way she did is a lot more impressive than, like you said, going out there and getting a knockout, because people expected that. This they didn't expect. They didn't expect her to be mounted or whatever it was and be in a bad position and then be able to defend herself, get up and not get stopped.
So, did you catch Islam Makhachev's last fight against Drew Dober, I believe?
Yes, I did see that one. I know Khabib was in his corner for that fight. He does have a new fight coming up.
Thiago Moises.
Yes, I want to
Because
see how
that's the only guy that would fight him, man. That's really what it came down to. No one else wants it with Islam Makhachev right now. And it's hard to blame him, but it's like you're not going to be able to deny this guy for long. He
see
dominated Drew Dober.
what's going to end up happening is the same thing with Habib. At first, he wasn't, when he was going up the rankings, a lot of people didn't want the fight because he didn't speak English and that. And but now, with Islam learning how to speak English and everything, with another win or two, he's going to be in a position where everyone will want to fight him, and they will want the attention on them, because now that Habib is gone, I believe he's the next big guy.
Yeah, and especially with, Hamzat's still out. What do you think? Do you think he'll come back at 185, 170? Because
You said
he took
Hamza?
everybody by storm and everybody was afraid to fight him too. And, the very unfortunate roadblock in his career.
You said Hamza, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I know he's in Vegas at the moment. He was in his home country training and dealing with the medical issues that he had because of the COVID. He him and Alexander Gustafsson are both in Vegas, I believe, right now at the UFC PI. They're getting ready, and I think they were saying he's going to come back in August at 85, I believe he'll probably take an 85 first, maybe. He at the moment, I feel like um, he's one of those. Uh, he's going to catch a lot more attention, and he's an exciting fighter because he wants to just fight anybody. He doesn't care if you're a striker who has 100 knockouts or whatever it is, or 100 submissions. He wants to fight everybody to test himself, and he's been one of those guys that's motivated me a lot recently, and especially seeing him come from nothing, and then in 3 fights he's this huge superstar, all because of his personality and wanting to fight people. I think he's going to do good, whether it's at 85 or 70. I believe he's a win or two away from being, respected by the fans, because they keep saying he hasn't fought anybody and this and that. I believe his last fight was against a really tough guy. I know, the way people judge someone is if they're not popular, they're nobody. When they say a big name, they mean somebody who's really popular. In MMA, I feel like there are some guys who are not very popular, but they're really good. For example, look at Leon Edwards. He's fighting this weekend, but he doesn't have a really big name, so a lot of people don't want to accept the fight against him. But he's on a 8-fight win streak or something.
Yeah, he's the type of guy that has to, and we've seen it before in the UFC. I remember when George Sotiropoulos was on a similar winning streak, John Fitch had to ride a similar winning streak in just to get his shot at GSP.
Yes.
And, but what I always say? I always respect, when people call their shots after the fight in the interview. Who do you want next? And it's either a respectful call out or a disrespectful call out. But don't you notice, Ilyaz, that the dudes that are always like, oh, I'm a working man, I'll fight whoever whenever they want me to fight. Don't you notice that it's always them that are complaining that it's the guys that talk that get the shots, and they end up missing out on those opportunities?
Exactly. I've realized that a lot too. I'm happy you brought that up. They'll have a really good performance, and then they're getting interviewed, and they're like, if you want somebody ahead of you, you clearly know the rankings. If you're number 15, you want somebody above you, right? So start calling people out. Say whoever is number 14, number 13, call them out. Don't say, oh, whoever, because I feel like if you want to be recognized and you want to be a little more noticed as far as the entertaining side goes, you have to be willing to make the changes to call people out. And it doesn't have to be disrespectful. You could just respectfully call them out to test your skills against theirs, and then you will never complain about not nobody wants to fight you, or whatever the situation may be.
Yeah, it's like when Jorge got the rematch against Kamara, and people are like, how does he get the immediate rematch against Kamara? It's like, well, dude, because he made Kamara so mad that Kamara called him out. He
Exactly.
gave the shot to Jorge. Jorge is, an evil genius like that. He saw those moves four steps away.
I
But,
I watched I watched that fight while I was on vacation in Florida, live, and I was rooting for Masvidal, but I feel like in his camp he worked on not being taken down and being more comfortable if he got taken down. But then he didn't work as much on what you know what was his strongest point, which is striking, and he underestimated Kamaru. Ended up getting hit by a very solid punch. I that would have taken out middleweights even. I don't think there was any chance of surviving that, because I remember when he went out, he was on the feet, he was already out, and then the dog that he is, when he hit the canvas, he tried to recover, and then the next few shots took him out even more.
Oh yeah, Jorge's a gangster. He's a Kimbo Slice gangster. But I think at the end of the day, I think we all kind of knew, there are levels to this game. Kamara is at, potential future greatest welterweight of all time status. Jorge Masvidal, is not there. He's a very interesting character. We love to see him stir up beef, but I just don't think that there was a super realistic chance of a win there. It was, because it would have been crazy to see. But, when you talk about fighters' popularity, like the popularity of guys like Hamzat and Islam, I think it's that. And it's also, you see the writing on the wall. If he comes back at 170 with the inactivity at the top of that division, what would it be, 3 years before he could maybe fight for a title? But at 185, they're all moving. Those guys are active. Brunson and Hermanson and Edmond, and those guys have all been super active. And Kevin Holland, bless his heart, with some of those most recent performances, has stepped up whenever needed.
Right? He would get a title shot a lot faster in middleweight, because um, I know there's a rematch happening now, and then they want Robert Whitaker to fight the winner next. Let's see. At 70, I do believe if he fought probably two or three more times, and as active as he is and as popular as he has gotten, I believe he would be given a title shot if he beats somebody in the top five. All he needs is a win over somebody in the top five, and I think he automatically gets a title shot.
So, are you going to be watching this weekend UFC 263?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
What are your thoughts about, I mean, the Leon Nate fight, Davison versus Brandon Moreno, and then what are your thoughts about Izzy and Vittori?
The Diaz fight with Edwards, that was surprising. I think a lot of people were surprised that that got booked, because no
It's
one.
weird, and it's a number one contender fight, which is even weirder when you incorporate Nate Diaz.
And then I believe it's the first time there's a 5 round fight for a non-main event, non-title fight. So
Yeah.
that's going to be interesting. I believe, see, with Edwards, he has cardio, but Diaz picks up as the fight goes. So that part's going to be interesting. If it's on the feet, although Edwards is a little bit more technical, Diaz can get it to where it's ugly and anything can happen in a fight. And then with his jujitsu being so good, I don't know how it's going to end up if it goes to the ground. I do think he can get taken down, but I want to see how Edwards will be handling the pressure from Diaz and the punches coming. And then if he goes to the ground, Diaz never just lays there. He's working. You're in danger all the time. So I feel like that's going to be very interesting. And if Diaz does end up winning, that would be a big statement. And if he gets a title shot, Does he have a lot of chance against Kamaru? I don't think so, but it still would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think I said like I think Leon wins this fight like 70 to 75 times out of 100. But in looking for the ways that Nate wins, I think it's going to have to be a Diaz brothers fight. He's going to have to be flipping him off from across the cage, slapping him in the face, talking all that crazy Stockton trash to him to get Leon to come into his fight. And then, on the ground, Nate's always capable of a submission, and he never makes you comfortable when you're on top. He's always throwing those crazy bows to the scalp. But he needs to drag Leon into a firefight as much as he possibly can, because when the fight's being fought on a technical standpoint, Nate's at a significant disadvantage.
Exactly. I was just about to say that when it gets technical, the perfect game plan to fight against Nate Diaz would be how Conor fought him with leg kicks, and I believe Dos Anjos fought him like that too, where they throw leg kicks and then you can put takedowns here and there to make him think about it. And if you fight technical with them, you could do good. But if you start, swinging, you don't have that big of a chance because that's where they thrive.
I tend to think that, their first fight, Figueiredo versus Moreno, was the greatest flyweight fight I've ever seen, one of the greatest fights in overall I've ever seen. But, even with the first result and how great Brandon Moreno did from round to round, I still have to give the advantage to Figueiredo. If it goes to decision, or if I know someone gets a finish, I have to think that Figueiredo is most likely to do that.
Yes, he would be the favorite. And I don't know how true it is, obviously, but I was hearing that he was sick in the first fight. That's why it affected his performance a little bit. So if they made the right adjustments, let's see how this one goes. That is going to be a very fun fight. I know the flyweights don't get noticed as much, but these two, like Brendan, he's a very likable character for the fans, and the champion, obviously, he's aggressive and he's getting finishes and stuff, and I believe that has gotten a lot of people's attention too. So that's a fun one. The main event, um, obviously, Izzy coming off a loss. A lot of people are wanting to see how if he's gonna get to bounce back, or if it broke his confidence and the confidence is gone. He does seem confident. I keep watching the videos and everything, the press conferences. He doesn't seem, at least he's not showing it, that his confidence has been affected. But Marvin has obviously looked really good recently, with his pressure, his takedowns. I watched the first fight. That was a really entertaining fight. This one, I honestly, it all depends on who could implement their game plan a lot better. I believe that person will come out as a winner. Obviously, in the last fight, Izzy got taken down, and people saw that if they can get him down, they can hold him down. And if you're a counter striker with him who doesn't just rush in like crazy, Jan basically showed a perfect game plan to fight against him.
Yeah, I think that, you know, like you said, it'll be about who executes their game plan better. But I think Vittoria is going to need a better game plan and better execution to win. I think that there's been this reaction to the Izzy Jan fight, like, oh, just take him down. But it's like, the thing is, we knew Izzy had a significant size and strength disadvantage going into the Jan fight.
Right.
The idea that it's going to be the same for Marvin to take Izzy down as it was for Jan to take him down, I think is a lot of people kind of overreacting to that result. Not only that, Izzy knows to go back to the drawing board on his takedown defense and, how to negate damage and get back to his feet once he's down there, because, Jan controlled him with a firm hand. Izzy, once he was down on the ground with Jan, he was down on the ground. I don't know if Vittori is going to be able to do that.
Right. Of course, a lot of people don't give Jan the credit, but his ground game is amazing, and I do believe each fight is different. So if he can hold him down, and not just hold him down, but do a little bit of damage, get him a little tired, he can have success, because it's not just about holding him down. He needs to make him tired so that in the later rounds he has a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I think that maybe Vittori, I don't know if you saw like the beef between them, that side screen that Michael Bisping did with them, where they were talking trash to each other.
Yes, I saw a little bit of that.
It was super entertaining. I think Izzy's a really cringy trash talker. I was more enjoying Vittori's side, but like, I don't, you know, Vittori was joking, like, oh yeah, man, I'm just gonna take you down. Just worry about that. That's all I'm gonna do. But it's like, I don't know if he wants to make, I don't know if even a brawl is better for Vittori here. I mean, in close range power punching, he has the advantage, sure. But I don't know if Izzy really has that mode. I think Izzy is just such a technically superior kickboxer that I don't know how much time Vittori really wants to spend in calculated kickboxing exchanges with him.
Jan had a perfect game plan because when they were even in kickboxing range, whenever Adesanya would throw one or two strikes, he would come back with a little more.
Blast him.
Yeah, he would come back with more, and that would kind of throw him off. But if you just sit there and wait, it's not going to be good for you. If you just go in and rush and try to attack, because in that fight, when Jan would try to go forward and throw basically a lazy punch or something, he was getting tagged because of it. That was the only time he was getting really tagged, and the leg kicks and stuff. So Marvin is going to have to be very calculated when he's doing this, to not make a mistake, not to leave himself open, not to get too confident or overconfident, because that's how he could make a mistake.
Yeah, how many more wins is it going to take for us to actually respect Jan? I mean, he got the upset against Dominic Reyes when no one really thought that he was a serious threat to that vacant belt. He
The
beats Izzy, the supremely confident Izzy. It's like, Jan, it'll take us 5 more wins. Kind of like, that we saw with Stipe a little bit, where it's like, it's going to take us like a long time to really appreciate the run this guy's having.
the I believe once he starts beating people the way he's beating them, um, he's gonna get more recognition and respect. But the main reason why he's not getting the respect is because obviously he won a belt that was vacated, you know, from John Jones, and in a way they kind of know that John Jones ruled that division, and until somebody beats him, they don't want to see somebody else as great. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when, Evander Holyfield won his title, not having to beat Mike Tyson. Fans never forgave him for that. It wasn't something that was his fault. In fact, it was Mike Tyson's fault.
Right.
But,
This isn't
you
Jan's
never
fault.
get it. Fans, for some reason, never forgive you for winning a title in a way that they see was less than 100% legitimate.
I do agree with that. And with John going up to heavyweight and he's wanting the money he wants, if he doesn't end up getting that, and he either gets his contract, um, if they give him they let him leave from his contract and he can go sign with somebody else. If he doesn't come back down to light heavyweight and fight against Jan, I don't think he'll have respect, because when Cormier became champion while John was gone, of course it wasn't DC's fault, but people didn't respect him until he fought against John again to prove that he was the champion. You know what I mean?
No one
So
got a rawer deal than DC from the fans, man.
yeah, especially as a light heavyweight, he wasn't. They knew what he was capable of, but he was always considered the number two just because he had lost to John Jones. Although he I feel like as a person he should be more respected at least.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's why, we feel such a strong sense of injustice, or, a lot of fans do, and the fact that Justin Gaethje is still in this purgatory. He had the belt. Technically, he was the lightweight champion. It gets removed. He doesn't get a chance to reclaim it or defend it after Khabib goes. And yeah, it's why we feel such a tragic sense when we look back at Tony Ferguson's recent career, because he had the interim belt and that was supposed to get decided against Khabib. but it never was, and we never got to see it. So people really do feel a very strong sense of injustice in those types of things.
Yes, and with Tony's situation, I don't know if maybe you could name some fighters, but he's gotten to a point where he's so respected that even after a loss, people still love him
Yeah, like
because of
Frankie
how.
Edgar too.
Yes, Frankie Edgar, same way. They care about this person because they've seen them grow, they've seen them at their worst, at their best, and they just have this connection with fans that you can't really you can't buy it or anything. No matter how famous you are or whatever, you lose and people will talk about you. But with him, they they care for him. It's a weird thing, but
No, I get, the thing is, these people contribute to some of our favorite moments as, as alive people. Some of, like, a very high percentage of some of my, like, most memorable, like, nights or moments are like, the night Rose beat Joanna, the night that Frankie Edgar Gray Maynard 3 happened, McGregor did, those are some of, like, my fondest memories. And whether you are like in complete parallel with a fighter as a person or not, it doesn't change the fact, like, that they created, like, moments that were, like, some of your favorite of all time. Like, they're the things that we look forward to when we're working during the week and thinking about the weekend.
yes, I do believe that too because I a lot of my good memories, whether it's with my brothers or whoever it is, even now, anytime there's a fight card coming up, and luckily we've had one almost every weekend now. It's something I look forward to, no matter if I'm younger, older, and I basically love it. It gives you something to do on a weekend. It motivates you, especially when there's a fight card happening. I'll watch it. It'll get me motivated to go and try something. And if I'm losing motivation or something for some reason, I watch a fight happen, and I love underdogs, especially when they're not supposed to be there and they have made it. I love those type of fights. I love tough fighters because I can relate to them a little bit more, and
Yeah, I'm not even a fighter, but when I need inspiration, sometimes I watch Forrest Griffin versus Shogun 1.
that was an amazing fight.
All right, Ilyaz, before we wrap up today, is there anybody you want to shout out? Anybody from all facets of your camper life? Anything else you want to say, express? The floor is yours.
Basically, I want to thank my new wrestling coach, Tyler, at Gladiator Wrestling Club. I want to thank Shomer, who's my sparring partner, and all my past teammates. I want to thank them because without them, I wouldn't be where I am. I want to thank all my family that, although it is a tough sport and they don't want me doing it, they still continue to, put up with it and stay with me. The sponsors that I have, they're I've gotten sponsors where they basically pay me and then I put them on my banner. I'm gonna be pretty soon making a banner. I get to represent their business and they've helped me big time. And I'm looking if there will be, after anybody watches this, if there are any more people who want to sponsor, they can just message me and we can talk about a deal.
Who
That
are some
that's
of the current sponsors you have?
I have a few. I have a barbershop called A&D Barbershop. It's out in Fairborn. It's out here. I like that place. I go there. I talk to the guy. He's a very nice guy. He ended up sponsoring me. There's R&R Brothers. It's a trucking company. There's a restaurant called Pasha Grill. If you ever visit here, I think that's where we would go. I love the food there. I've been going there for years. I wanted them to sponsor me. They ended up sponsoring me. Obviously, Gladiator Wrestling, and then there's another company called Shama Express LLC. They're one of my biggest sponsors, and I've had everything from there was a company called Kingstone where they had whether it's kitchen or flooring, and then a furniture company called Elite Furniture out in Kentucky. Obviously, I'm looking for people that will continue to stay with me, like solid sponsors. And then if there are any new ones for each fight, I'm willing to, work a deal with them too. But I want to find who's serious. That way I can continue to work with them and continue to promote their business while I'm also at the same time getting financial help from them. Because ever since I turned professional, I get to train a lot more and especially making money from them. It's really big help.
All right, folks. Well, this has been another interlude episode of RotoBallers Tap That. Your host here, Brady Grove. I'm going to be, as I said, on the RotoBaller MMA Premium DFS Slack chat 2 hours to an hour before the slates will lock on FanDuel on Saturday. I know the RotoBaller MMA desk, MMA news desk will be popping off. You can follow Daniel Yanofsky for that, Dennis Clausen. Me, Brady Grove, that is at Roto Brady. And, we're going to be back to business as usual the next week. It's a busy week in MMA. But I have been here today with a friend of the show making his return to Tap That, Ilyaz Mamadaliyev. Thank you so much for being here, man. It was a great conversation again. I can't wait to have you back already.
Thank you for another opportunity and a fun time. And I will be back on. Let's do this before every fight, after every fight. Last time with it not going my way, obviously we didn't get to do an interview, but let's see how it goes this time, and we can get one after the fight too, before and after the fight.
Absolutely. Gonna have to make that happen. Thanks so much for being here, man. Really appreciate it. Folks, look out for this. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy all the fights coming up. And we'll be back to business as usual next week. But have a good one until then.